So let's first, before I start, I just want to say thank you, Littman, for the funny joke of making me present today. So all my anxiety builds up to this point, and I lose it all tomorrow when it's my birthday. Thank you so much.
Tomorrow's your birthday?
Yeah, well, you didn't know?
Didn't know. Well, I don't care really. But
Okay.
we should definitely celebrate that like after tomorrow's presentation. Well, I'm kind of thinking.
Okay. So my problem. So I actually had a different problem before, and I'll explain that later. But my problem that I actually came up with for my project was that you see, whenever you're in class and you see the professors keeping attendance and stuff like that, it can take a bit of time. For us CS students, we don't see it much because our classrooms are quite small. But if you're in a CCE class, for example, the professor will take like 5 minutes of the class to do that, to just make sure everyone's here and all. And 5 minutes of a 50-minute class is 10% of the class. Do that every time, that's 10% of the entire course dedicated to keeping track of attendance and not actual course time. So my solution now, so students have their picture taken to have their Falcon 1 cards made, but also to be put into the system. Like this picture is me pulled up from freshman year. Yeah. And so now I wanted to think of if you could put all these images for the entire student database into an AWS database, like the cloud, you could then use attendance tracking. So let's say a student walks in, they walk in front of the webcam, all they need to do is press a button and it'll say, hey, you're here or not. So what I have is I have a list, I have a few buckets. Bucket 1 will have the entire student database, and then buckets 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. are buckets dedicated to classes that have the list of students in that class. And then, so what I'll do is I'll take a picture, whether it be a webcam picture or a picture uploaded from the system, and it will detect, it'll say, hey, this person's here, or this person's not here in the picture. And then it'll say who's in the picture, not, and then it'll mark them down as present. So it's kind of hard to explain, but probably be better to explain when I actually live demo it, which will be right now. So let me just get this set. I can. So let me just downsize this a bit so I can actually press the button. Takes a second to start because, oh yeah, I remember. Okay, so one thing I will have to note before I do this, so I'll need to explain something. So this would be an idea of using a secondary webcam to do attendance stuff. Because of that, I'll actually have to temporarily turn off my webcam on Zoom, because applications don't like it when you use two applications don't like it when you use both and try to use the same webcam. So let me just go on Zoom, stop my video, and restart my program, and it should run just fine. Just give it a second. It takes a second because I need to connect to AWS, and there I am again. So let's pull up a class. So let's say CSE 415, and then here are a list of students that are in the class. As you can see, there are a few students here, like some of my roommates, some people here, Nicolas Cage, the whole sorts. So what I can do is I can just scan my face, and give it a second. What I'll do is I'll send this image to AWS, have it compare it to the entire student database, and whatever images are matched, it will say that. So as you can see, my name, Trevor Krenz left, is marked now present instead of absent. So now I'll actually reset this because there's another thing that I can do. So I can actually detect multiple faces at once. Joe, can you come up here real quick? Let me just pull up. Now let's pull up a different class. Let's say 419. And now, as you can see, if all I need to do is press, oh, sorry, button. It'll detect both of our faces, and yeah, you need to get a bit closer. Let me just reset this. So I can, I'm resetting it so that I can show that two can happen at the exact same time. Doesn't like your face.
Bad, just
What about if I try just doing? Yeah, let's try just doing you. Let's go bend over.
There we go.
Okay, so I don't know why.
This wasn't close enough.
Okay, let's try one more time. Love it when your live demo has problems to begin with.
okay. You will try it anyways, but I believe you because people, but I'm interested in seeing it. Anyway.
Okay, but let's try both of our faces close and stuff like that. This is now this saves the system, so I can actually pull this up and put in group chat.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
You've got a 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah.
So what's supposed to do is it detects multiple faces in the system, and then it goes through each face in the photo, starting from the largest to the smallest. And what it'll do is it'll say, "Hey, this face has been detected." And then once the face has been detected, it'll compare it to the entire student database. And then if a picture matches another picture, it will take that key. So whatever student is in the key. So let's say from the student database, my name. It'll take that and it'll just temporarily keep it in a like little safe box. And then it'll pull it up when time to switch absent to present. And it'll do that. My guess is the reason why it's not working is because I was having problems with that little storage box being a bit buggy. Because what I would do is I would end up cleaning it right after. So I'm guessing it's cleaning his name before it's uploading it. I can probably show you after this demo, try to fix it. But anyway, another thing I can do, yeah, you can sit down, sorry. So
Don't worry about that. I believe it.
So one thing I can do then is also use a picture. So let's say I take a screenshot of the Zoom call. Now I am only going to use a example by taking the camera roll. 1 second, let me just find some saved pictures. Get a screenshot test here somewhere. I don't know where it went, but let's just say I took a photo of the Zoom call and stuff like that. But I could do the same thing and upload the face, but it's always saying me present, so I'd have to reset it. And another thing I could do is, because this is an attendance tracker, what I want to do is at least have a way to submit the information to the cloud. So what I do is I have submit list. And what I'll do is I'll create a JSON file, which I can actually show you. So it will upload to this bucket, which is empty right now. But if I say submit list, Wayne does everything, and I'll submit the attendance. And all I need to do is refresh this bucket, and there's the attendance. But I also have it saved to the camera roll, so I can actually show you what the JSON file looks like. I don't know why everything's so scrunched up, but this is what it looks like. You have the name, person, attendance, absent or present, name, etc., etc. So, now back to my slides. Okay, so what I did right and wrong. So I'll first talk about what I did wrong. The original intention of this project was something else. It actually involved using a live feed by connecting Kinesis to my Windows device, Amazon Kinesis. It's a live stream. It's a data streaming device I could use my webcam for. Now the problem is that's not part of the free tier of AWS. So it cost me $9 without even turning it on, just having a function for Kinesis there. Another thing I did, I had a problem when I switched to this database thing, this attendance tracker. I had a problem trying to get the storage box working. So the original way to get this working was the non-AWS way is to do a task, return the data, and then have a second task take that data and return the data again. The problem is the invocation method for AWS is not like normal Visual Studio C# stuff. So it would not return the array that I sent of all the keys that were detected in the picture array because it's a multi-face. So another thing that I tried to do was HTTP clients. And that did not work because I don't know why it didn't work. I got the message through to the outside. I just couldn't verify the credentials for some reason. So I ended up giving up and just did the very cheap way of just taking that object key, storing it, like duplicating an image in another bucket and just storing it there. Yeah, not exactly the best way of doing it, but what I did right was I did correctly detect a specified face in an image. As you can see, it could detect Joe or it could detect me. I don't know. There was some finickies of why it wasn't detecting us both. And I could connect to the AWS and have it return the expected output. Given that if I made a command, it would follow through. AWS is kind of hard to learn at first because there's a lot of big words. And if I had another month, what I would do is I would implement the HTTP client correctly. I had Noah Cruz on Slack. He was giving me some advice on how to do it, but I cannot fulfill it. And honestly, I'm actually asked him if he could help me after this project with HTTP client because I'd really actually want to learn it a bit. So in order to get the webcam, I had EMGU, and there was some problems with the capture system. But let me actually show my video feed. So pretty much it was very finicky, but one of the more noticeable problems was the ratio. So like, let's say my hand right here on my webcam, it would only show like this ratio. So it'd be a much smaller capture. And that is something I tried to adjust, but unfortunately could not do. And it was just a bit more finicky of like some certain bugs and stuff like that. One thing I want to do is create a time-based system for the attendance. Now, as you can see, when I showed my JSON file, it didn't show the dates and stuff like that, which if I don't show the dates, just go overlap the previous one. So, and also a time-based system could be good because you could mark someone tardy. And then I want to do some few more extra features in the client that I didn't think of the time, just general software engineering stuff, like the professor could manually change the absence of a student in case the webcam didn't work or something. And so then, how can I apply what I learned? So I have a better understanding of connecting cloud-based technology to a local system. Honestly, the AWS is just programming big words. A lot of it was trying to use general problem solving. Like, for example, so what an image a face request does is it compares one image with another image. So it actually caught me a bit off, like trying to compare those two images for the longest time, until finally I found out you could just use a for statement and just loop around and get all the target images in the bucket. So just understanding, implementing common knowledge with AWS systems, better time management and problem solving. I did not start this project right away. First month was just me procrastinating and sitting around. But come October, then come November, and come last week, I put a lot more time into it and stop smiling. And yeah, just better understanding of how do I solve problem. And the most important thing, I made a Stack Overflow account, so I'm definitely go be ready for the industry when I graduate. And then questions.
So when you originally went into doing this, you had one idea of the project you were to do, and then you had to pivot. So kind of tell me about that process, like what your original dreams were, and then,
Yeah,
and then what
so-
you ended up with, and what figuring out what the limitations were like for you. I mean, you already said you procrastinated, blah, 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 whatever.
So my first intention was to actually make a security type system, where it would use facial detection with a live stream. So let's say you're working remotely with very sensitive data for the company you're working for. You obviously don't want someone to shoulder surf you or just peek around you to see that data. Let's say if you're working with that, if you're working publicly, but I don't know why you'd be working public. You never know. The big problem was Kinesis. I first tried to implement Kinesis because I thought, hey, maybe if I first figure out the webcam, then everything else should work fine. So I had problems with Kinesis at first, then I gave up and said, you know what, let's just try to understand AWS first and then implement Kinesis. So I did that, and then comes Kinesis loops back around, and I realized it cost money. I received like an email with a bill for $6. And that's me completely forgetting about the function. That's me not even using it. So I wanted to pivot it. So I thought instead of doing like a live stream, maybe just take a picture of a webcam viewer and then submit it and compare it. And then I thought, maybe I could use it as a face request with students. And I thought the picture that we had of our fun, I don't know why it's not working. But you can see on the other screen, but our pictures from when we were taking as freshmen. Now, granted, they probably need to get better photos because this is like, it could not detect this face because of how, bleh.
So we did
I'm
these
sorry.
students as you.
It did not even see it as a face because of how badly pixelated
Oh,
it
yes.
is. Yeah, and I was ugly back then, so I'm a different man now.
Ugly.
I mean, am I wrong?
Well, not maybe inhuman, so.
And so when I switched, I ended up switching to attendance tracking because I had a basic understanding of face requests, and I thought, hey, maybe I could just take a screenshot of the camera viewer and it would send it straight to AWS. Simple. Well, not simple, but simpler than what I was trying to do before, and it was free. So
So when you go out and you work in industry, what will you take from this project in terms of your learning experience? What would you do differently next time that you didn't do this time?
better, probably more centered of using the Lambda function. So Lambda is kind of like a serverless based cloud system. So it bases the processing within your local system. So you don't have to spin any wheels, even though the data you've extracted is from the cloud. So I probably, as I went along, I started to rely on it a bit more for the data that I used. At first, I was kind of scared to use it. I just thought the bare minimum, get the face request, that's it. But then I started to use it to manipulate the object keys and make sure I can, store them. And yeah.
Questions?
Yes.
You using for the comparison? Is it like built-in AWS thing or?
So AWS has it's called AWS recognition with a K instead of C. So it's a predetermined database. Now, granted, there were a few other options that I wanted to use. At first, when I was $100 in on this project, I found a 5-minute tutorial to get facial recognition working on Visual Studio and all that. But that did not use cloud systems. So what we would do is you'd use the Lambda function to make the face request because you need to process that function. and then it would take that function. So I would upload. It would take the. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering because I usually do that when I'm anxious. So it would take a input, which would be the picture or the webcam image. It would process the face, then it would return a function, data set, which that's basically a function. So pretty much it's just normal functions in C#, but with extra steps.
What's the deal with the Chuck Norris thing?
Oh, that's
I'm not done. Every lot with it. Go where?
I also
Losing point.
now I'm kind of scared to mention this, but there was only one student in 420, that being Chuck Norris, because he is the peak image of user interface.
Oh, basket weaving.
What?
That's the class. 420 is basket weaving, right? Any other questions? Once, going twice.
So I did my senior presentation on ThreadFix, which is a vulnerability organization solution. So just a quick agenda here, going to go over an introduction of what ThreadFix is, some definitions for the platform, the goals and problems that I solved, the steps I took to integrate it, a static demo, and then obstacles and successes. So just a really quick introduction. So I came across ThreadFix during my summer internship. So I was an information security analyst intern at an organization, and I specialized in application security. And this was kind of like my summer project that I had to do. So I had to stand up ThreadFix, which is kind of like a bones application. There's not a lot of meat to it yet, just kind of like structure. So ThreadFix, like I mentioned, it's powered by the Denim Group, which is owned by Rapid7. And so it's a vulnerability organization and management tool. It's applied in the information security space and more specifically in AppSec and also vulnerability management. And the business use for ThreadFix is to kind of host one roof for multiple different data streams of vulnerability management, but we'll get into that more in the presentation. So some quick definitions here for the presentation. So a vulnerability is a weakness that can be exploited. A workflow is the process from identifying a vulnerability to the process of actually remediating it. And this is often a team-to-team effort. Testing and scans is the process of trying to find vulnerabilities. And then the findings of the vulnerabilities are called findings. Remediation is the process of closing these vulnerabilities, so closing the gap of the vulnerabilities. And then just a few more specific ThreadFix definitions that will help with the static demo later on. So a team in ThreadFix is a grouping used to organize and manage the permissions or collection of application assets. And then related to that is applications. So applications are the container for a specific entity. So think of it like sports. There's a lot of different sports teams or sports types. So my favorite sport's basketball. So we'll talk about basketball. So we talk about the basketball team, but within the basketball team, there's individual players. That's kind of like the relationship between team and application. And testing and scans, like I kind of mentioned in the previous slide, but with ThreadFix, this is just where the data gets uploaded. And then a remote provider in ThreadFix is an external facing scanning tool. So it's an external third-party application. So a quick little quote here from the Denim Group, which is the people who created ThreadFix. So two teams with different focuses. However, both teams play a critical role in the remediation of application vulnerabilities and need to communicate. So this is just a really high level overview of why ThreadFix is important and kind of like what it does. It really serves to help aid communication between teams when solving vulnerabilities. So what is the problem? The problem that I identified was kind of threefold. So starting with the first point was organizing and utilizing data pulled from multiple different applications. It was just really hard to juggle between multiple different applications and kind of looking at the vulnerabilities and deciding what to do from multiple different applications. It was like juggling, but with way too many obstacles. Then the second point is outdated ways of keeping track of vulnerabilities. So with vulnerabilities, if you might not know, they happen all the time and they're always changing. There's always new 0 days, always new exploits. So it's really hard to keep on top of these vulnerabilities. And then also like keeping track of them for an organization is even harder because it's constantly changing. And then the third problem is that it's super time consuming as well to take metrics for vulnerabilities existing on a large scale within a large organization. So why do these need to be solved? Starting off with the first point, organizing and utilizing data from multiple applications is extremely overwhelming and it's not efficient. So if you're joining the team like I did in the summer, I was so overwhelmed because there was like 7 different applications that I had to learn how to use, had to store passwords for, had to learn, what they do and why they're different from the other ones. So it's just super overwhelming and just not efficient because you had to go back and forth and back and forth. Secondly, manual vulnerability records leaves room for errors, is inconvenient, and is not efficient. So it's really easy to kind of skip over a vulnerability when you're looking at 7 different applications or just get lost in the shuffle, which is a big thing because it's a really high risk thing to miss. And then thirdly, metrics on all company vulnerabilities takes too long and consumes limited resources like time and talent. So the application security team I served in this summer was only 2 people, and they're very highly specialized in what they do. So they need to spend their time doing stuff that requires, high skills like they have. They don't really have time to be doing stuff like verifying vulnerabilities that can be done with a tool like ThreatFix. So like you guys can all tell, my proposed solution was ThreatFix. So there were 2 primary goals with integrating ThreatFix to this organization. The first being to centralize test and vulnerability data that exist in multiple applications into one place. So bringing all these different data streams into one house under one roof. And then to capitalize and maximize the value of the vulnerability data found. So really get the most bang for your buck with these vulnerabilities. So then some more goals that are continued: increase efficiency, reduce the time to remediate vulnerabilities, better provide more organization within these vulnerabilities, deduplicate results, which was a big one because with all these different platforms, you would have like 5 alerts for just one vulnerability. So then you'd have to go in and you have to verify these false positives or if they're actually multiple alerts. So it took up a lot of time. So they automatically deduplicate the results for us and then also modernize the documentation. So how these goals are planning on being met. So with the centralized scan and vulnerability data, we called in these different third-party application data through command line and also through within the application ThreatFix. They have a space for that, which I'll show you guys in my demo. Efficiency is planning on being increased, like I mentioned, because you don't have to flip through all these different apps when you're just trying to get a high-level overview of all the vulnerabilities within the organization. Remediation time is reduced because there's a specific area in ThreatFix dedicated just to remediation. So it's really easy to just go there and get all the information you need. Vulnerabilities are organized, like I mentioned, with the team and application dynamic. Deduplicate results, those are done automatically by the platform. And then most importantly, modernize the vulnerability documentation. So right now you kind of have to do it by hand and then save it on like a Confluence page or a different type of page. And so it takes a lot of work. So you have to go in and say, okay, I found this, cross-site scripting error. Okay, but then I have to go in and see, does this exist within this team yet? And then if it doesn't, then you have to go in and manually add it. But ThreatFix does this for you, which is awesome. And then you can also, it makes like graphs for you and you can export those PDF or CVS, which is really nice if like a CIO is like, hey, I need this information on this ASAP. You can get it to them in a few minutes rather than taking a few hours. So then a quick high-level overview of the steps I took to integrate this application. So first we had to create the ThreatFix server and then download the software like Java and Tomcat. Those are the 2 essential softwares that we needed to get this application stood up. And then we created a firewall, which was just the requesting access within the organization. We had to set up a proxy request for ThreatFix, which would allow it to reach out to these third-party applications and also other external facing stuff like GitHub. And then this one was kind of a pain, but it was very interesting to see. So it came prepackaged with HTTP. So we had to configure it to have HTTPS. So it was secure. So working with the certificates and stuff, that was kind of interesting to see because you hear about it a lot in school, but then to actually get to do it with your own hands, kind of interesting. And then the application was configured with Java and Tomcat. And then a few more steps was then we actually got to install ThreatFix via the command line, set up our initial variables so we could store the logs so we could do troubleshooting later on, and then also setting up initial users and stuff like that. Added the team to application. And then the most exciting part was getting to connect the first data stream because I was looking at this without any data in it for probably a month. It's kind of boring with no data in it. So when we first got to get that first external facing object integrated in, it was cool to see all the data in it. And then the final big step for integration was just creating tags and severity tags so we could rank it based off of the damage it would do against our organization. So that brings us to our demo. I just want to do a disclaimer. This is going to be a static demo because I can't show you guys, this is my organization's vulnerability. Here's where it's at. Go get them. So this is a static demo with falsified information. So yeah, that brings us to our login page here. Nice and dandy, nothing too exciting. But then when you log in, this is your dashboard, which is just your homepage. And you're going to see right away, there's two graphs here. You have the vulnerability trending graph, which just shows all the vulnerabilities, the time they were imported, the severity on the right-hand side there, and then the numbers. And then to the right of that, the most vulnerable applications by number of vulnerabilities. Just a really quick overview when you log in to see just what's going on. And then below that, recent scan uploads, where they're uploaded from, what date they're uploaded, and then some comments. So let's say, for example, we have Hannah's app over there. So we have improper neutralization of special characters. Then you could say like, I remediated this on 12/8/2022. So really high level overview of our homepage here. And then we're going to go into the portfolio section over here. So this is where the teams and applications kind of come into play like I talked about. So you'll have your teams. So for this, I have team demo, and then your applications live inside the teams. So we have Hannah's app and super high level overview. You can see the bones and then they're ranked there. And then if you click into Hannah's app here, this is what it looks like without any data. And then this is what it looks like after. So lots of cool stuff here. Kind of like the homepage, we have the vulnerability trending report and then the top 10 vulnerabilities ranked by number and severity. And then here at the bottom, if you guys can see, that is the list of all the vulnerabilities found within this application. And it's ranked by severity, and then it's grouped together by what type of vulnerability it is here. And also within that same page, there's a really cool option that you can filter it. So you can make like custom views for stuff. So let's say you only want to see like the highs and the criticals. You can have that pre-configured here, and then you can have a specific view of the data for that specific application. Still in the portfolio page here, this is kind of a better view of when you click into the vulnerability list here. So it shows you the path, the parameter, the file, and the full URL of where the vulnerability is located, which is really important because I learned how to do some web pen testing stuff this summer. So sometimes we have to go in and make sure they're not just false positives. So you have to go actually carry out the attack and to make sure that it actually does exist in the wild. So this gives you a lot of good insight on how to do that. And then still within the portfolio page here, this just shows you what it looks like with multiple teams and multiple applications. Just really organized, and it gives you the ability to see a high level really easily. Moving on to the scans page here. This is where the scans live. I apologize, this one's a little bit blurry, but this one, you can see the date that the scans were implemented, what application was scanned, what external provider it was scanned by. So an example is Checkmarx. Checkmarx is a scanner. And so you would see like, oh, it's done by Checkmarx. And then you would see the total number of vulnerabilities, and then broken down by the severity of those vulnerabilities. And then moving on to the analytics page, this is the home for all things like metrics. So there's lots of cool graphs here. It contains all the vulnerability data, like organized by scope, tag, detail, and time. So it saves you a lot of time when you're trying to get those reports printed off, when you procrastinated it too much and you need to get it done by the end of the quarter. So this is just our trending. And then we're going to look at the different types of views we have here, the top 3 most important. So moving on to, this is our point in time report, nice little pie chart of all the vulnerabilities, how many there are, the percent, and then the average age is how long they've been open. And then also it gives you another list of all the vulnerabilities. And then still in the analytics page, this is our remediation tab. And this is where the reduced remediation time comes into play. So you would come in here if you're trying to remediate some vulnerabilities, and you can see all the vulnerabilities ranked by severity, as well as the starting count here. There's no data in here right now, just for security's sake. But the starting count would, let's say we started with 50 critical vulnerabilities, and then we remediated 49 of them. So you'd only have 1 left. So it just gives you a good idea of how much work you've done. And then at the bottom here, there would be all the vulnerabilities that are open, ranked by severity and what applications they're in. And you could see comments. So like I said, let's say we scanned Hannah's app and we found a cross-site scripting vulnerability, and I'm working towards remediating that. I would say remediated on this date. I need to pull in this external team here. So it's a good way to communicate cross teams. And then moving away from kind of the meat of the application here, this is where I did a lot of my remote integrations here, not all of them, but some of them. So they do provide functionality to integrate data streams within the application. And the other ones that weren't integrated through here were done through the command line. Just it gives you flexibility if Threadfix doesn't exactly like the integration you're trying to do. And you can create a new provider. So that's what this is down on the, this right here. So let's say I wanted to add HANA Scanner as a new provider. All you have to do is select the type, the name, enter your API key, and decide what you want to import. And that's the end of my static demo, which leads me to my obstacles I faced. So I kind of mentioned it, but some of the remote connections just did not work as nice as others. Some were a lot more friendly to integrate and they integrated without any errors. And some of them were just kind of a pain. So we had to do a lot of work reaching out with external support ticket cases to kind of understand why. Like the errors would range anywhere from the API call failures to, it connects and scans and there's no error messages, but it just can't read the data in. So some integrate better than others, but it did teach me a lot about, working in a corporate world and how to problem solve cross team. And then another obstacle was figuring out how to utilize the data. So this is my first big corporate internship. So I wasn't quite sure exactly what the InfoSec space looked like or how they even operated. So then being tasked right away with, well, what are you going to do once you get this thing working? It's kind of daunting. And then some of my successes here, the initial stand-up went really good. I was able to take off really fast and hit the ground running. So I kind of said in the steps for integration, the firewall, the permissions, the HTTPS cert, and working with Apache, Tomcat, and Java. It was a little bit of a learning curve, but still it just went really smoothly. And then the configuration also went really good. Getting Threadfix to do what we wanted it to do right away also worked great. Doing our tags in there to rank them and stuff like that, and working with the command line to configure it. And then just breaking it up into bite-sized pieces. At first, when I got this task, I was very overwhelmed because I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this in a summer? And then my internship got extended throughout the semester, so I had a little bit more time, but learning a lot about, sprints and agile planning and stuff like that. So just kind of taking it day by day, but then also having the humility to admit when you don't know what's going on and reach out to the people who are full-time, because this is what they do for a living and they're here to help. So that was another success with that. If I had another month. So I would like to get more remote providers connected into the application. So get more scans in there, more data to analyze against. And then I'm in the process right now of applying the data into the organization. So we're in our final few phases of this application rollout. So figuring out how we want to apply it. And what I've kind of come to is the main functionality this is going to serve is with the metrics reports. I know I kind of talked about it a lot, but just providing more clear metrics that are less time consuming, more easy to read, that kind of stuff. And then also rolling it out and launching this application within the organization to different cross teams. Because right now it's just me and the two other people in AppSec who have this permission to view this application. So working with Active Directory to get multiple users in there, and just getting as many people who need to have access to this, have access to it so it can be used the way it's intended. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you guys for listening. Is there any questions I can answer?
So did they dictate that Threadfix is what you wanted to use, or did you research what some options would be?
They kind of gave me a little bit of free range. Or kind of like, this is what we have tried in the past, because they tried to integrate it in the past, but they weren't able to get it integrated right away or in the time frame they wanted to. But they were open to hearing other options. But upon my research, I realized that this would probably be the best.
So what made you pick this, and who are the major competitors to Threadfix?
Yeah, what I found was there really wasn't any super big competitors that I found. So I thought it would be a good viable option because I had the option to pick this project or pick a different project, like go work with the SOC or a different InfoSec group. But I wanted to do this just because I thought it was a cool concept to have all the data pulled in and under one application.
Okay, so now based on what you've learned with this project, what kinds of things are, that's kind of open-ended. What do you think you would use Threadfix for in the future, or at least the skills you learned in doing this in your future career?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of soft skills and hard skills, like soft skills, just learning how corporate America works with projects and timelines and stuff like that. But then more technical stuff, I learned a lot just about the process and life cycle of standing up an application from scratch, and also documentation, because there was literally a paragraph of documentation for me to work with from the guy who tried to do this and couldn't get it stood up. And so that was really frustrating because I know that he probably spent more than a month working on it. So just keeping good documentation on what you've done to kind of move forward.
You're already using Lingo. so
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
an application.
Yeah, I've got all the buzzwords.
Yeah, got it. Good question.
I don't know if this is even a thing.
Yeah.
But like, you know, if there's a way to like send emails to maybe like Teams or something,
Mhm.
like if there's a critical thing for this application.
Yeah.
And it's this team, like, is there a way to integrate that?
Gosh, I'm not quite sure about that because, well, there's a thing called, it's a software called Jira, and it's like how you track how the organization tracks like all their tasks. So like, let's say, there's a vulnerability that comes out, a new 0 day. So it's like 0 day task, and then it gets pushed out to everyone in the organization. So we're trying to get Jira integrated into it. So it wouldn't be like an email push, but it would be like a Jira board push type of thing. So in a roundabout way, kind of there's that concept that we're working on, but that's going to probably be in a few months.
For questions. What's twice? Dokey. What do we got? We got Turner, Dominic, Griffin. Thanks for that. How about it?
Okay, that's different. I haven't seen that before. Sorry, I haven't seen the Zoom version of this before. Hello, my name is Turner Frazier, and I'm doing my presentation on a project which is, in essence, the media database. People today, oftentimes, they like consuming a lot of media. One most talked about thing people like to talk about is, what's the latest TV show you like to watch, what movies do you enjoy, or recommending music to people. Many people find friends with this in mind. And it's just, consumption has just gone up immensely since over the past several years or even decades, maybe you could say. A lot of people consume their media in two different ways. They either stream it, so they may watch something on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon, or they may listen to music on Spotify, or they buy a physical piece of media. Like I said before, a lot of people nowadays prefer to stream theirs, which has led to a few problems,
We can't see your
including
slides on
things
Zoom.
such as having multiple streaming services. You might have to pay for like 3 of them when you're just trying to find one show, or you may not even realize what you have available. Despite streaming being a very, very common practice nowadays, there are still a lot of people who buy physical media. You have some people who always want to have access. They don't have to worry about if whether or not the service that they bought it on or streaming on was available for like.
One second. I think you're sharing the wrong screen.
Oh.
On Zoom, we're not seeing what we're seeing there. Just seeing
Oh.
the standard media database.
Oh, sorry, I haven't really done a thing like. Which one do I?
I always just share the full desktop.
Oh.
Captures everything, but. Whatever you want. I've seen the physical media slide now. One is,
I'm just trying to.
I don't see anything on the screen at the moment.
Oh, it. Sorry.
No worries, take your time. Fine. All right, well, what we see on the screen, I see on Zoom, so we're good.
Okay. Okay. So despite streaming being overwhelmingly common nowadays, there's still a lot of people who prefer to buy more physical media, such as like DVDs, CDs. Some of the people who might do this are, say, people who want to always have access to them. So some movies or TV shows may be taken off of one streaming service and sent to another. For example, when a bunch of shows on like Paramount from Netflix or from other stuff. And sometimes even if you buy one on, say, Amazon, Amazon may lose the rights to that movie or the like, whenever, depending on what region you're in, or just lose it for some random reason. Other people who you have people who like collecting. You know, you always have people who like collecting movies, putting them on a shelf, showing them off, or just want like special collector's edition. And you have people who just want to gift items. It can be a very easy gift for you. Just go find a movie, you know, somebody likes, buy like a DVD of it for them and hand it to them for like Christmas or something. So all in all, physical media isn't as dead as some people may say. Now, oh, is it showing up?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good.
Now, one of the problems that has arisen over the years because of this is that people can own things in any variety of formats. You could own something on, for say movies, for example, you may own a movie on DVD or Blu-ray, or you have a physical copy, or if you're listening to music, you may have a CD, a digital version, or even vinyl. It says in many ways, people can lose track sometimes of what they actually have and what they have it on. This is where my solution came in. Using C# and Excel, I've designed an application to help people keep track of what they have, as well as various other pieces of information to be able to search what they have. For example, keep track of what a genre something is, or what year it was released in format, and etc. This way, people can help keep track of what they own and what they own it on. Demonstration. It's not going, is it? Is it not showing?
I still see what I see on the screen here.
Okay.
So if you see it on your computer screen, you probably want to stop the
Yeah.
share and then reshare. Oh, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
You probably have to end your presentation, so it goes back to. Hey, here's my computer. I see your video thing.
Yeah. Now it's not popping up on here.
I don't see it up there. So I see better stuff on Zoom than I do with the screen. for sure. Oh, it's on the back of it.
It might help if you
On.
duplicate the screen instead of
Yeah,
extending it.
you're mirroring or is it?
Oh, maybe that might be it. I flipped my laptop up to other places, so maybe that's the issue. I'm extending it, yeah. Should I just duplicate?
Yeah, duplicate probably what.
Ah, there you go.
There we go.
And now it's also on Zoom.
Yeah, I
Great.
see exactly the same thing.
So here is basically the opening where you can select on what you want to see. Do you want to see what you have in terms of list of movies or TV shows, or you can add new things into your collection as well. For example, if you go to add it to it, say I want to add new movie. Say I want to say maybe Revenge of the Sith from Star Wars. What year was this released? Let's say 2005, 2004. And let's say I own it on DVD. You can choose from a wide variety of Blu-ray, DVD, digital. And then say director George Lucas. Genre science fiction. And franchise Star Wars. Then click add. Run into an issue. Yeah, oh. That is one thing I've been having trouble with. And I would say you go into your movies. It'll have added it down here. And if you click on it, it will bring up some more information such as the title, the director, year release, and some additional information like what franchise and format it is. The rest of these are all other movies that you've added. So click that and it'll pop up whatever else. Now, say you're trying to find like a specific movie, or if you're trying to find like a franchise you're trying to look up. So say you want to see what other Star Wars movies you have. Like type in Star Wars into the search bar. And it will pull up all the other movies that you have listed as Star Wars. So that's more information about that. And this is the same way for if you want to see movies or TV shows. Also have that, or music. What? And some of what I have for I'm running into some difficulties with how Excel has been interacting. All right, well, that just shows up again. Take it back to PowerPoint. is it showing now? All right, so what were the things that went wrong? Performance, I was having some difficulty, it was slow, as you probably saw, it could have been faster, in my opinion. Originally, I wanted to use a database software such as MySQL, but when I was researching more into that with the beginning of the project, I realized it probably wouldn't have been maybe the best fit for more of a local application. I did have some trouble where I was having, I kept having to stop every now and then, just like I worked in small little shift. I had a harder time focusing on maybe one thing, focusing on for a long time on certain objectives. So I had to switch sometimes. And I also had to try and refamiliarize myself with with how certain pieces of code worked, or how to connect it together. I wasn't sure originally how to use more of an Excel file to store stuff and have it show up. What went right? I found it was very easy to try to show off how each item was each item owned. So I felt it was easy to see what exactly was available. And I found it was easy to add items despite some of the difficulties I was having with Excel. It was an easy process. And I felt like it was easy to use. If I had another month, what would I do? I would try to improve the interface, maybe try and have it stand out more, have it look maybe a little bit better than kind of how plain it was. Maybe try and make it run faster, and I would maybe expand upon some of the features, such as maybe being able to send a list of what you have to others, or allow for sorting by like alphabetical. Any questions?
So take me through the decision-making process. You said you looked into MySQL. Take me through the decision-making process that made you land on Excel versus either some other database or cloud or whatever.
I was really looking for more something that you could have set up easily. I didn't want to have to look into whether or not you had like a database set up or anything like that. And I thought Excel, it's almost on any machine. And I just thought it would be an easy way to have just, if you wanted just a file you could send to somebody, instead of using that, you could maybe copy what form you do have in Excel, maybe email to someone.
So is the idea that if you wanted to share your library with somebody, you would actually send them just an Excel document? And
Yeah.
Hey, this is what I have.
Yeah,
You can give them your application as well to help digest it or whatever, but ultimately your data is stored in an Excel database. Your application is just a front end
yeah.
to that. Okay. Did you happen to look into something called SQLite?
I didn't. I was more looking into MySQL, which was when I was more.
Yeah, so MySQL is a relational SQL database that probably you can install hopefully, but that's a thing. Otherwise it's in the cloud or whatever, but SQLite is effectively, I think it would have solved the problem you were trying to solve. And you can package it with your application and it's a local only database.
Okay,
I think that would have probably helped you with some of your performance things, because I'm guessing the sluggishness had to do with you trying to talk to Excel's API,
Yeah.
and going through the VBA with the visual basic
Yeah.
application scrap and that kind of stuff.
yeah, I did run into
Not that Excel's horrible, just
yeah, I did run into it where it would sometimes switch between read only or read and write. So I would sometimes have issues with trying to put information to it rather than pull.
okay. So one thing I found interesting, and I trust that it is true, but like in my mind, I stream everything. I don't physically own anything. But I've run into that many times where like something, I'm a big fan of like Stargate SG-1. And it seems like they keep hopping streaming services every 4 or 5 years or so. When I want to rewatch the whole series, it's on a different service. So, I'm guessing you can buy the whole series of that for $5 or something, but it didn't occur to me like that physical media is still a thing. But it kind of makes sense that it might be, and you want to have some way to organize it. Other questions? Twice.
My name, my name's Griffin Ronsky. This is a Java program I made, named it Good Robot. I might not want to actually have it extended. I did that on purpose, but
Take your time. You gotta step or whatever.
well, as I'm doing this, I would like to ask you guys, who here at any point in time attended school? Yeah, that's pretty close to 100%. All right. And then I also want to know who here plays video games. Either you're on the esports team, you have a cool island in Animal Crossing, you play Balloon Star Defense during your classes. What's the overlap there?
I'm World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, MMO guy.
Pretty close, I'd say. We've all gone to school. A lot of us play video games. So before I jump into the game, I want to run through an outline real quick. I'm going to talk about how did Good Robot come to be. I'm going to explain my thinking behind it. I'm going to demonstrate it, and then go over what's next and briefly cover some frequently asked questions. All right, so what's the problem? School's not engaging for many students. The pace of school does not contribute to success of students. Traditional schooling involves usually one person in front who sets the pace of the entire course and all the content for everyone. And if you're lucky, that's right on track at the same speed that a single student out of 20 needs it at. And well, half of the people have a firm grasp of the content and they're bored. It's going way too slow. The other half are lost because there's gaps in their knowledge. There's building blocks to what they're learning and they miss something and they really need the class to be like 2 days behind of where it's at. So why does it need to be solved? I think that traditional format is honestly dated. I think it's out of date. I think revisiting the approach is needed, and I think it could do a lot of good. Some of the good is that it will allow us to live in our vocation more fully. And, you know, someday an individual might be a first generation high school graduate, and that's exciting. Like, that's awesome for them. Maybe an individual really needs to pass a chemistry test, and that's awesome for them. Just think about the rate at which civilization would progress if everybody was able to fulfill their function to the extent of that they can. And I think we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to our neighbors to put our best foot forward and be the best we can be. So what is the proposed solution? Make learning and filling in the gaps of our knowledge fun, make it engaging, make people want to opt into that process and learn with a gameplay first approach. You hear about kids who are addicted to Fortnite. What if that 16-hour session of Fortnite they played over the weekend, they were developing a skill that's going to greatly assist them in life? So Good Robot's specific approach, the user interacts with the robot to explore the world. It's more engaging than sitting there listening to a guy talk about whatever he's talking about. And it makes retaining information easier. And as you progress, you'll unlock different educational activities. So for a demonstration, I'll go over some essential use cases, starting with the title screen, why I picked my character design, your movement, your collision in the world, and how you interact with things within the world. So this is the basic title screen. You can start the game, you can exit, and this is your spawn location. I figured with this current iteration, it's geared towards younger people. So I wanted the character to be friendly. So you come down, you can go left, go right, move up. It's intuitive movement, especially for PC gamers. WASD, up, down, left, right. We don't have any cheat codes yet, but. And then collision. Not floating through walls or running up lampposts gives you a sense that the world's actually there. And it's really fundamental to a game. And then you can interact with objects. You go around, you pick up these floppy disks, and you can bring them to a terminal to load different educational programs onto your terminal. And then this is the default logon terminal screen when you run into the terminal in the game. All right, I've never had to do this with it behind me before, so. All right, so you can start the game. Here's a live demo. Go out, you can explore the world, walk on the roads. Grab num jump up to the terminal. The terminal usage is really intuitive. You hold W to access it, S to walk away. You sign on, sign up. This is meant to mirror a command prompt a little bit. So you hit H, brings up your user. Here's things you can do. So for an example, you can run num jump, which is modeled after doodle jump, except for when you jump on an equation, if you land on the corresponding answer, you'll get a point bonus or a jump boost. And then LabAvest protocol would be like a daily thing that you sign on and you can do really quick, maybe to get you wanting to do more throughout the day. You just pick which chart has the best growth rate. And then just for ease of access and usage, you can hit 0 to exit if you need be. Oh, yeah, and it does run Doom, of course. Yeah. State of the art. All right, so what went wrong? It's an admirable idea, but my scope was massive. I needed to rein it in, and for the project itself, it could probably be reined in even more. The implementation of the map took some iteration. I started that all wrong. The doorways to start were the exact same size as the character, so if you ever needed to go between two things that had collision, you had to be pixel perfect, or you would just be stuck right there. The floppy disk loading new games is not yet implemented. Here's the map. So what the map is now is it's this text document that gets read by the program and iterated through. It's a two-dimensional array with 50. It's 50 by 50, and each number corresponds to a tile set. So 2 is grass, 8 is a lamp, 1s are lab walls, 6 is sand, 7 is the pavement, the 0 is the lab flooring, and the floppy disk is 9. The other floppy disks that I grabbed here was actually an object. 9's right here, that one's not real, essentially is what that means. So what went right? It was exciting. I really liked the idea. I think it's needed. I honestly think school's outdated and that it could use some tender love and care. The game creation and theory crafting of fun gameplay loops was also exciting. I had an idea and then I had another idea, and you would just want to chase those as much as possible. I really like the look of the game. I think it could be cleaned up. I think you could tighten up some of the screws on it. So what's next? Update the graphics, tighten up the screws, have it have a nicer polish, the save function. We're talking about building on concepts and knowledge. You're going to need to be able to maintain your progress. And then customize a robot. Maybe not everyone in the room has the same affinity with blue robots as I do. So maybe you can make yours red, or, you know, there's something wrong with you. You could also not have a robot. And then some FAQs. Do I actually think this could possibly replace a classroom? No, but I think it could update a classroom, and I think it will. I think things like this in the future will be used in classrooms, and I think it's the right direction. What other educational games would I consider putting in the terminal? Type Racer. I love Type Racer. Being able to efficiently navigate a keyboard is very needed in today's age, and it's essential in basic computer literacy. I don't know if everybody was in that email chain for the student survey, but if I could do it over, what would I change? I wanted to do it in Java, but that was like purely a personal decision. You look at the tools and stuff available to you in Unity, like I think that would be a better route. How did this help me grow as a developer? Using object-oriented programming to manage large data and keep it clean is unbelievably essential. And if I wasn't employing that methodology, I don't think I would have got past like 15 lines before I was completely lost. What is my takeaway for the project? Is that if you apply yourself, you can do what you want to do. The only difference, like maybe you think this was impressive or somewhat neat, the only difference between me and you is that I sat down and I did it. So if you work towards something, you can do it. And will I continue it? Yeah, I think I will. I think it's needed.
So when you imagine this being used for modern education, I mean, you mentioned a few minutes ago that you don't think this replaces school, but it could improve things or whatever. How do you imagine, whether it's this game or, you know, because there's been a big movement towards gamifying learning, is kind of the idea that that's what young people today connect with is video games. And if you get some way, it's almost like giving, you know, if you have a dog who needs medicine, how to get their food, you know, that type of thing. So, you know, obviously kind of a 2D, I don't know, Final Fantasy-esque or, you know, Legend of Zelda-esque type thing maybe is going to be a little dated for the modern gamer. How does this get integrated into the classroom where you can kind of have this be almost the thing that keeps them coming back? It's the medicine and the dog food.
Yeah,
Still having normal, something normal about education.
Yeah, I think you could invert the script of how day-to-day school usually goes. So instead of me teaching you stuff, you go play through a level. You get stuck on something in the level, you come in and we like do your homework in-house. We go through it with what wasn't working for you.
Okay. Because there kind of is I don't think it's actually commonly used, certainly not at the college level, but there's kind of this idea of flipping the classroom where a lot of times the teaching is done at home and in class it's much more, I guess, organic or, and I think that's kind of picking up some steam. I don't know if that will pick up any steam at the college level, but it might happen out of necessity if, you know, enrollment keeps going down or whatever. You gotta do what you gotta do. But I mean, I'm a fan of gamifying whatever. So I mean, I kind of like the idea of this in principle. So I'd be interested in how, you know, like the practical examples of how can this be incorporated specifically into maybe computer programming education, something like that. So yeah, I mean, it's at least intriguing, just the idea, and it's not a new idea, but it's one of those things that people talk about, and I'm not sure it necessarily gets applied to, I don't know, education that I care about.
Yeah.
So something like that. And you said you used Unity for this, right?
No, I'm saying that if I was to redo it, I'd probably use Unity
Oh, so you
for
use
like how you
Java.
said, yeah,
Okay,
like how you
gotcha.
said where,
That-
like,
Yeah, it was.
the Zelda looks a little dated.
Yeah. So, but I mean, frankly, you probably got more programming experience doing it this way.
For sure.
Unity would have, done a lot.
The
of
tile
that.
manager alone.
Yeah, Unity would have done a lot of the management for you, and even now, Unity's added a whole 2D library for doing stuff, so, yeah, so I mean, for other audience members, when you see this, yeah, it might look, hey, this is very 1980s-ish. He wrote this in Java, there was quite a few things in the background there that were actually happening to produce what we saw. You can't really compare it to like Call of Duty or something like that. Okay. Other questions?
So maybe from less of a computer science teaching perspective, just a broad perspective, there is research that has shown that about 40% of students entering high school don't know much about computers. Most of it's not on smartphones, but I saw some of the things you did in like a thing was probably less welcoming for someone who's trying to learn computers as well,
Mhm.
such as the save floppy disk or maybe the terminal itself.
Yeah.
Did you put the? I'm just wondering, what did you think of that for like people who don't understand computers completely?
Well, I would also like to implement levels, and if we'll meet you where you're at, so if you can't, if WASD is not intuitive to you, we'll start there,
Alright, out of pure curiosity, did you like hard code that math, like straight up like live?
I wrote that, yeah.
That's insane, that's crazy, good job.
Other questions? Going once, going twice. And not least, we have Dominic. If you have USB-C, we have a plugin on there.
Can you hear me?
I'm pretty sure we'll be able to hear you.
Like-
Whether or not we switch slide, we'll be able to see the same slide. Switch again. Yeah, we're okay.
So, my name is Dominic, and for my project, it is focused around phishing awareness and creating assets that can be used to train employees at any company. Basically, if you don't know what phishing is, it is pretending to be a legitimate source and getting users to click and enter information that I can then use as the attacker. I was contracted at the school district of Random Lake to create assets for them that they can use to train their staff. I hope to get a job relating to social engineering when I graduate. So I really want you to remember this because it's absolutely true. It only takes one person to click the link and it can infect the entire system because the malware will backdoor into the system and it will lie dormant for up to 9 months at a time. Phishing is also one of the most used attacks currently in the industry because it is so successful. So, or my solution to phishing, personally, I don't think it is a problem that can be completely solved unless you just get rid of technology. Because there will always be bad people inherently. But I have 3 possible tools, which is reactive learning, frequency learning, and proactive learning. The main part of my project revolves around reactive learning with the emails that I created. And then I created two other types, which is a prototype method and a prototype app. They're not currently completed, but for the emails here, here's some companies that I tried to mimic to get people to click on stuff. So now, let's go. Okay. For creating these emails, I used a system that they had called InfoSec Institute. It's a platform focused on security and phishing training for any business. So I created 30 emails using their system. And with these emails, you can run something called a campaign, where you put learners, which are just like the staff members' names. You can send these emails out at a frequency or however many you would like to send. So I'm gonna go, I will slowly go through all these for you. So YouTube. If you notice, these are a lot more difficult to detect because like they'll have the actual email address from the real sender, and they will, right here, they'll input whatever user it's sending to, it'll input their name. So it's incredibly hard to track, to like catch this if you're not looking for it. So like here we have unread messages, that'll be the subject, from Twitter, from their real no reply email. All of these buttons that you're seeing, or these links, will bring them to any link or education you wish to give them. I'm just gonna slowly go through these.
These are examples of emails generated by the tool you're looking at.
No, I would basically create these using the tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these can't really be used outside of the tool because they're saved in it. And the process for creating these is like trying to look up if there's any on like Google Images. Sometimes people will share like a screenshot of it, and then like this is what the real one looks like from the company, so you can try to mimic that. All right, I can go back to those after I'm done if anyone has questions on that. So the school district allowed me to run one campaign for 1 month. The campaign contained 15 of the 30 templates, and each learner received a random template one time. That was an oversight in our campaign. We should have sent each learner 2 emails. Here are my results for the single campaign that we ran. It's far below the industry standard for phishing, but it was my first time doing it. But like I said before, it only takes one person to click the link and you can manipulate them. Here were my top ones. So it was only 4 people who clicked on the phishing link. It was 3 on the donors choose, 1 on the Apple sign-in. And when you look at the opened, that just means they looked at it, but they did not click on the email. My second frequency learning. So if you have something, because like not everyone learns the same way. So some people learn differently. So if you have something like this chart I created, the idea behind this is to have something that you could like put up, hang on like in an office or in a classroom to help people, because people are not all like us. We're all computer science professionals, so we're aware of these issues. Next, I have a prototype application that goes for my proactive learning. It's basically a prototype application I created and using my time when my campaign was running. So I wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. And the idea behind this is to get a demographic such as children or adults age 50 or older, some sort of app they can easily use that can help them with internet safety. So it'll have these 6 like submenus for like topics they can look at. Okay. And they kind of have, it's not completed yet. It's still, like I said, the emails were the majority of my project. So what went wrong was I had planned to have a back end working. When you would click on the phishing link, then you would go to a back end. So it doesn't fully work how I intended it. So I tried to use configure this tool, and the idea behind it is a user can click a specified link that you created. So if they clicked on like a hyperlink that you put in text, they wouldn't see this like large address here. And then from that, see, I've connected to it already. It would say user has been connected, and It can see sessions that you're on. Here's like the page, what the page would look like, because it's just google.com. And then if you go in to your dashboard, this was just me. And I connected to it while I was here, so it can give you exact like location. It's not right, but do things. You can see sessions they're on. You can see network status. You can run attacks on them. But I just thought that was cool. But I was not able to get it to work because it hasn't been updated in a couple of years. What also went wrong is I didn't have the best time management skills, and I'm currently working on that through life. Producing the project idea took a while, and having a mindset of a scammer is a lot harder than it seems when you grow up to be a good person. What went right is that I created real email assets that will be used in the company and are currently in use. I created a possible chart that could solve a lot of problems. And I ran into a lot of problems, which is, I put that in for what went right, because if you don't run into problems, you can't grow as a person. If I had another month, I would keep searching for a reliable backend. I would continue creation of emails and run another campaign on students.
So when you said that you had your chart up there for the number of people who open things versus phish, what you call phishing, that means they went to the website, because usually what these websites do is you put in your username and password, and it doesn't matter what you got it right or not, they capture it. So that's what you're calling phishing, right? You got credentials from somebody.
So my attacks were only drive-by, which means they were only links. So in this case, it was if they clicked on the link that I provided, they were marked as phish. I didn't do any credential entries, but I could
So what
have.
was the difference between opened? So when they opened the site, that was there, and then there was a link on the site that they had to click on, and that was the phish.
Opened means they got the email and they clicked on the email, but they did not click on the link in the email.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I just think about one thing. The ones you had up there going through, they seemed more convincing, because they had emails coming from like, it looked like legitimate domain names, where, sometimes you can just tell that, somebody spells PayPal, with hyphens and stuff like that throughout, so it's kind of less convincing. But sometimes I'll like open up the site, and I just like putting in randomly bang on the keyboard for your username and password, and if it says, like welcome, and kind of pretty much knew that was trying to scam you. So now the company you worked with, what are they going to do with this data?
They use this to help train their staff, and they've been doing it for 3 years so far. That's why I had such a difficulty getting my phishing rate farther up.
Because their staff already has training.
I have a lot.
Your job is effectively to try to trick their staff.
Yep.
Okay, well, so I mean, the fact that you had any sort of phishing percentage was not horrible, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so interesting. Now, just based on your, and maybe you didn't look into this, but how many companies are actively training staff to protect against this kind of stuff?
It's way less than you think.
And it should be, right? Yeah, I kind of, that was my gut feeling with it, is that this is something that we get these emails all the time, but I feel like Cordia certainly doesn't train us on anything.
district manager there said if I took this to a company that didn't train staff, I could probably get over 50% fishing.
And the tool that you use, just out of curiosity, does it have a thing like, if you click it, you open it, does it then show up like, hey, you kind of failed this phishing test?
Yeah, you can set it for that.
Yeah, because I've kind of seen those before where you're then informed that, look, you know, we tested you and you suck. That type of thing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these are major problems today. On any given day, I bet you 10% of my email I get on a day is trying to do something nefarious.
But yeah, this is exactly what I'm going for, trying to get a job in, is like security awareness or penetration testing.
Okay. So now the place you're working for, are you interning with them right now?
I did in the summer and they just say I can come back whenever I wish. And
Okay, so are you hoping to work full time for them, or are you looking at other options or whatever?
currently they're talking about getting in touch with like CISA, possibly.
Okay. Other questions? This topic is one of those super boring but super important topics. That we don't
Yeah, I'm
think about,
sorry.
right? It's like
It's
out of
my
sight,
bad.
out of mind, until you get screwed. And then you realize that all those protection sites for identity theft, that's the reason they charge you so much is meaningful.
Doesn't help I'm not the most, I have a very monotone voice.
Well, that's what I mean, if you, being somebody who's interested in this, there's a kind of a famous hacker tech guy, Kevin Mitnick. Have you heard of this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got some interesting books. So this guy was, historically, he was somebody who, you know, was breaking into systems and things like that. Well, now this guy makes bank as a consultant for companies, going in and saying, you know, hey, give me a bunch of money and I'll help protect your system. So I mean, effectively, that's what you're looking at doing. It's like, look, I've proven that I could break into stuff, so I know
Yeah.
what the enemy's like. So really, what you're looking at is how can I learn how to. One of the points you brought up there is it's hard for you to think like an unethical person.
It's very hard.
Yeah, 'cause, you know, it's unbelievable sometimes what people will do to scam other people, and you're like, why would anybody ever do that to another human being? But yeah, it's big bucks.
You feel bad for them when you do get a fish person, you feel bad because they're probably freaking out.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked if a thing popped up saying like, hey, this was a test.
Yeah.
Learn from this, whatever. Other questions? What's going twice? Right. So.
We have one more night of presentations tomorrow night. I think we have 5 people again. So same place, same station, tomorrow, 5 p.m. I hope to see most of you there. Good work, everybody.